Do you expect any splashes tonight? I don't think the Skins are trading the number 2. We know that the Bengals aren't going to trade 1.
Do we know that?
What, the Bengals or the Skins?
Yeah. No. Do we know that the Bengals aren't going to trade number 1? I don't think we know that.
I would be floored. I would be floored if that happened.
Why do you leave that that possibility open, Mike?
Well, I've known for weeks that Stephen Ross, the owner of the Dolphins, loves Joe Burrow. And it wasn't that kind of BS, take it with a grain of salt pre-draft rumor. It was one of those things that I heard from someone, and the circumstances and the way it came to me, it was obvious to me that this is a guy that Stephen Ross wants on the Dolphins. And I saw the report earlier today from Shefty that the Dolphins had been calling the Bengals over the past couple of weeks, and the Bengals consistently have been saying they're not going to trade the number 1 pick. Well, calling up and saying, would you like to trade the number 1 pick, and can we have a negotiation, and the Bengals hanging up the phone, that's a far cry from an all-in move that could be coming today from the Dolphins. I'm not saying it is going to happen, but let's consider this. Stephen Ross is going to be 80 soon. Stephen Ross has been through plenty of drafts where the Dolphins have pissed away picks that have turned out to be not very good players. If he decides he's taken over, if he decides he's driving the bus, if he decides he's going to call Mike Brown, the owner of the Bengals, directly, and he's going to offer all 3 first-round picks this year and something more on top of it, right, at some point it's the offer that the Bengals can't refuse, to take Joe Burrow, hand it to the Dolphins, and instead you take Justin Herbert or Tua at number 5, and you pick up an extra 2 or 3 draft picks. You guys lived that 8 years ago when Dan Snyder decided he had to have RG3. Mm-hmm. When the owner decides, I have to have this guy, you never know what's going to happen. And the question becomes, is Mike Brown so stubborn that he would keep saying no, no, no? And here's the wild card to keep in mind. And I'm glad this doesn't air in Cincinnati, because I'd have Bengals fans, calling me nasty names again, but I'm used to it. If you put an offer on the table that puts Mike Brown and the Bengals on the fence about what to do, Burrow's people could swoop in and just if they do it in an artful way, just make it clear that Joe really doesn't want to play for the Bengals. If that's the case, right? And I got to be careful about all this because the Bengals fans will be up in arms. But what if Joe Burrow would rather play for the Dolphins than the Bengals? What if that's the truth? We don't know. He's not going to come out and say that. Mm-hmm. It's stupid to say it, because you got to go to Cincinnati if the deal doesn't get done, and you got to exist there, and you got to make the most out of it. You got to make chicken salad, right? But if the Dolphins offer enough that Mike Brown is thinking about it, and then Burrow's people inject just enough doubt, maybe that's the thing that makes the difference. Again, I agree with you. I'd be floored if it happens, but we can't just assume it's not going to happen. I think it's less likely Washington trades out of number 2 than it is Cincinnati trades out of number 1, but I think both are highly unlikely. But still, I'm fascinated by that little shred, that little possibility that maybe something can happen today.
Yeah, I mean, I guess anything's possible. All right, but beyond that, beyond 1 and 2, do you expect anything? I mean, do you expect someone to trade up for Tua? How do you compare Tua to Herbert? What are teams thinking about those 2 guys? What do you expect?
Well, the big issue with Tua has been the inability to get a proper physical evaluation of where he currently is because of the pandemic. And you throw on top of it an observation that a GM made to me after he suffered the broken hip during the season. You got 3 college seasons for Tua, 3 lower body injuries. For a guy who uses mobility in his game, that is not promising for his ability to stay healthy at the next level. So, there has been a prevailing sense now that Tua is going to fall out of the top 10. And when I first heard it, when I hear something like that, my thought is, well, the team at number 11 is putting all that out there, that he's going to fall out of the top 10, because usually that stuff gets pushed by a team that wants a guy to fall because they want to draft him. But when you start hearing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again, you start to realize there's something to it. And it comes down to this. Teams want doctors who are accountable to them to be able to give them the thumbs up or the thumbs down on a guy, period. Nick Saban came out recently and said, hey, if you don't take Tua, you're making the same mistake we did when we didn't take Drew Brees in 2006. But at least in 2006, the Dolphins doctors were able to examine Drew Brees. They got it wrong, but they were able to examine him. If the Saints that year hadn't been able to examine Drew Brees, do you think they would have signed him? Probably not. So the key difference is that inability to have your doctors come to a conclusion on how healthy Tua currently is. I think that's the thing that may indeed contribute to a slide right out of top 10.
All right, what about Trent? You think Trent gets traded today or sometime during the draft here?
The report that came out not that long ago that the Eagles, the Jets, the Vikings, and the Browns are interested in Trent Williams. I had somebody connected to the process tell me unequivocally that the Eagles are not involved and are not interested, and that made me think that Washington is doing whatever it has to do to expand the market beyond one team. Now, Chris Sims told me earlier today on PFT Live there are a couple of other teams that are interested in Trent Williams, but he couldn't tell me who, which caused me to give him a little bit of a hard time. But he believes that there will be a market. And if there is a market, that's the thing. If Trent Williams isn't staying with you, you need to have multiple teams after him to get the best possible return. And right now there's a belief, look, it's got to end at some point. You can't squat on this guy indefinitely. It's not fair to the team. It's not fair to him. Get value for him. Scott McLuhan, I saw earlier this week, said that Trent Williams is better than any of the first-round offensive line prospects in this year's draft. Yeah, he's older and he's going to be more expensive, but if you look at him in football games, he's going to walk through the door and he's going to be better than getting any of these rookies up to speed. So I think it's going to happen, whether it's Cleveland or wherever. I feel like Cleveland makes the most sense given where they are right now, but I feel like it's going to happen at some point this weekend.
Real quick, I don't know, 30 seconds or less. Can you give us, Mike, your biggest riser in the draft tonight is your best guess, and the biggest dropper?
Well, you know what riser means? Riser means that the media is finally catching up to what the people on the inside have known all along. That's what a riser is. Nobody really, especially when you don't have private workouts or pro day workouts, no one's really rising or falling because the opinions haven't changed from what they were post-scouting combine. So, I think that the two things to watch. One, how many receivers get drafted in round one? Because there are so many good receivers that will go into rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5. And Eric DeCosta, the Ravens GM, said last week that you can find a starting receiver in round 5 this year. How many teams will jump on receivers in round 1? And also, how many running backs are going to go? That's the sexy fantasy football position. And it could be that it's just one guy to the Chiefs at 32. Sims and I both think Clyde Edwards-Helaire from LSU is going to be the guy who goes. And that's not a sexy choice to be the first running back. A lot of people think it's going to be DeAndre Swift. It's going to be interesting to see, number one, does a running back go tonight? And number two, if a running back goes, which one is it going to be?
All right, great stuff, Mike. We appreciate it.
All right, have fun tonight.
Enjoy the draft. Enjoy the crown.
Yep,
All right,
enjoy
buddy.
the barn.
I can say it, thanks.